You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Are you ready to learn the 3 secrets to launching a successful podcast? Hi, I'm Bill, a recent client of the Podcast Mogul. If you've been thinking about starting a podcast but aren't sure where to begin, he's got you covered. He is hosting a free webinar where he will share the 3 secrets that can help you launch, grow, and monetize your podcast without any fancy equipment or technical headaches. Click the link in the show notes to save your spot now and let him help get your podcast off the ground.
Welcome to Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. Join the podcast mogul Phil Better as he interviews successful entrepreneurs that make their living in the digital world. Now, let's join your host, Phil Better, and his special guest today on Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast.
Welcome back to another insightful episode of Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. Today, we're diving into the transformative journey of a seasoned entrepreneur and consultant who not only navigated the heights of corporate success, but also has embraced the challenges of making a profound impact on the entrepreneurial landscape. After nearly 2 decades of contributing to some of the world's leading companies, our guest ventured into the realm of entrepreneurship, founding and eventually selling his own thriving business, which I'm going to enjoy asking him about. 3 years ago, he embarked on a new adventure, establishing a consulting practice dedicated to elevating founder-led companies through the innovative System and Soul framework. He's assisted these companies in transitioning to a more robust management team-led model, fostering greater efficiency, consistency, and ultimately a higher evaluation, which what founder doesn't want. Join us as we explore his journey, the lessons learned, the wisdom he's eager to share. Please welcome Huba. Huba, thank you so much for being here today.
No, thank you, Phil. It's a real honor to be here, and that's a fantastic introduction. So, Huba Rostonics, hello, everybody, coming in from Seattle. So, this is great to be here.
I'm very excited because when I received your application to be on the show, or your request to come on the show, or whatever we want to call it, I was like, this is something I want to talk about. I don't have enough entrepreneurs who have sold their business, started the second part of entrepreneurship, which is, I think, is giving back to the realm. So I'm very excited to talk to you about all of your journey so far and what you're doing at ThriveMonger. But we're going to just jump right into it, Huba. Why did you become an entrepreneur? What led you to decide to leave the corporate world after 2 decades and jump into this crazy world of entrepreneurship?
So the main thing, Phil, I think that entrepreneurs always feel like they are a square peg in a round hole, right? It's they cannot find their place many times, right? And especially in the corporate world, I mean, it has great things, it provides some stability for some time, and what have you. And also I'm deeply, grateful for the time that I spent in corporate, because it shows you and you learn a lot about great functioning systems, processes, of managing, for example, a multi-billion-dollar company, right? So you can learn a lot from that, and it's certainly not an easy task, right? But the thing is, also these processes and these things sometimes, kind of like hold you back in the things that you want to do, because they don't necessarily align with what you want to do and what the corporation wants from you. It's also, larger companies have a thing that we like to call the corporate immune system, right? It's something that tries to keep everything in the status quo, right?
Yeah.
And because it's easier. It's usually more beneficial for the individuals to stay in that lane, right? So entrepreneurs, usually we think that we go out and we think, that we can do things better, faster, cheaper, right? Or not cheaper for us, right?
Cheaper for us,
Yeah. Right. We want to make more money. So, and that's an interesting thing, because you know, the work that I'm doing right now is actually, and I'm just tying it back together with something that Michael Gerber wrote in his seminal, book, The E-Myth. And it's this: entrepreneurs go into business mostly because they love what they do. Okay. So they have some kind of a craft. They are either can be considered an artist or a technician or an artisan, right? In their craft, and they want to continue to do that on their own terms. That's a key thing, right? They don't want a boss telling them what to do, right? It's one of the things. And the other thing is that, in all honesty, they usually think that they can make more money, right, doing it on their own. And but very soon they find out that they need more than just that. That's exactly what Michael Gerber says, that you also need a manager and not just the technician, but the manager and the entrepreneur, the actual personality that pushes forward and looks for new things, and it's bold and accept risks and all those things, right? So I think that's the allure of getting into entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So you were working for some major corporations. I want to kind of just put my mind together to the sale, and then we'll jump into Thrive. So you were working for major corporations for 2 decades, which is I'm guessing always in the Seattle area or the West Coast area, correct?
Not really. It's all over the place.
All over the place. Oh,
yeah.
So a world traveler, or at least a North American. So when you decided to take the first leap into entrepreneurship, what was your venture? Like, were you always having little side ventures, or was it corporate life pretty much your whole life? And then you're like, I want to try something. I feel the need for change in my life.
So okay. So let me give you a little bit of context on that, right? So you mentioned that I founded my own company, right? So straight out of college, we found a need. Me and my partner and I, we found a need that there were manufacturing companies, okay, that were going through some phases of transformation, and they couldn't necessarily afford, a forklift upgrade. So taking out, their production line, putting in a new one, that's not the way, that they wanted to do things. So we founded this little engineering company, and we would refurbish machinery, and we would do industrial automation and stuff like that, supporting these manufacturing companies. And we enjoyed what we did. A couple of engineers. I'm an electronics engineer. He was a mechanical engineer. We kind of like came together, perfect match, right?
It's your playground.
Yeah, right. And it was playground, right? Because we would walk the factory floor without having to put out widgets, right? We would enjoy looking at these things, making them. So great. But there was a point where we decided, well, this is going okay, right? I mean, it was profitable. We were making a living, but we wanted to do something different. In particular, my partner wanted to go, continue his studies in Sweden, in all places, right? So and I was getting married at the time and whatever. So
it's the Sweden.
We did. This was kind of like we got a lucky break. Okay, it was the employees that we had, 3 employees. We were able to do an employee buyout. Okay, we offered them, listen, we want to move on, right? Do you guys want to be out of a job, or do you want to run this thing, right? That was basically the proposition. So it worked out, right?
Interesting.
But it was still quite an emotional decision, right? You build this baby, and you're running it, and you put all your heart into it to make it work the right way. We really made a point of operating it like a serious business, even if it was a small shop, right? And then when you decide to move on, it's like, you kind of want to get out of it, but you also have this attachment, right? So it was quite emotional. that's why, we ripped up the Band-Aid and we moved on. And but it worked out, I think, for everybody. So that was one thing. But that was a tremendous experience because, we had to run everything in the company. It was accounts receivable. It was marketing. It was, the actual technical thing. We were doing development because we also wanted to kind of like build a product, build our own intellectual property as well, right?
Yeah.
So we were kind of like doing many things at the same time, many gears. So it was a tremendous experience, right? We learned about finance, about accounting, about, legal, all kinds of stuff. So super interesting. And then when I got into, working for corporate, I worked for some of the, so first of all, we did some consulting work for companies of the likes of Procter & Gamble, Dana Corporation, Quaker Oats, so we learned about, how deeply they were into these processes and things that they did, right? When I moved on and I started in corporate, I decided, well, I'm an electronics engineer, the whole technology space is growing. Let's get into that. And I jumped into that. And I went to work for all places for Nokia. Okay. So, and that was also a fantastic experience, a company very well, motivated by a purpose. Their tagline used to be connecting people, which we all know where it got us. But it was a good intention, right? But anyway, through that place, I always kept this entrepreneurial, flame in there, and I tried to do different things, and kind of like, advising people who were starting up and whatever, trying different things, to the point where I got really excited. For example, one time, and I went to work for a startup in Silicon Valley, right? So I learned the vibe also there. It was very interesting as well. That imploded a little bit, so we had to restart. And but now the thing is, after doing all this, I'm like, okay, how can we really what excites me is this process of building organizations, of starting out things. So I'm like, okay, I'm not as much interested about running them anymore, right? So how can I help people who want to, be entrepreneurs, and how can I help them in that process? So that's what I've been doing for the last few years, doing consulting, right? Creating new processes, new kind of like, programs and things for larger companies, but also got myself into System and Soul, which is, a framework basically that helps you put in place a system to run your company, but without disregarding the soul that propels it forward, right? And the soul is this thing. It's not a wishy-washy thing, but it's the purpose, it's the values, it's the culture of the company, right? So I hope that answers your question in some way.
Really long. It does. It gave us the whole journey. It answered a lot of questions. It also popped up a lot of questions for me. Like I want to touch on you touched on your framework, your heart and soul framework, your System and Soul framework. Apologize.
Yeah, that's right.
I want to explore what that framework entails and how it differs from traditional management models. Because I am someone who was in corporate for probably close to 2 decades as well, just shy of 2 decades. So I understand like their processes and how important it is for businesses when you go to work at a smaller company that has none, and you're like, oh my God, this is horrible. But I want to know, what does the System and Soul entail? How does it differ from the other type of management?
Yeah. So I, first of all, I follow 2 things, right? One of the things is that I use System and Soul because I believe that companies have to perform today to have a here and now. But they also need to transform to have a tomorrow. Okay. It's always, and especially in these times where change is so rapid, right?
Yeah.
So I use kind of like 2 different things. One is System and Soul, right, for the perform piece. And then I use exponential technologies or the EXO framework for the transform piece, right? Which is a completely different conversation, and we can get into that. But the system and soul is basically, when you work for a large corporation, first of all, they have been, it has been years since their founding, right? So they have been developing these different things throughout their lives, right? And also they had the luxury of having an army of MBAs working in there, and trying to figure out how to do things better, right? So they usually build things like, for example, processes, right? So processes for the things that are repeatable, right? And they put in automation and all these different things. They are also very clear on who does what. They're especially good at keeping you in your lane. Yeah. But there is an org chart, right, that tells you this is what you're responsible for. This is what you have to do. And if you don't do it, you're out, right? You're not doing your job. And then they do another thing, which is also very useful. They do two more things, but one of them is they have these key performance indicators, right? And it's basically, okay, so if we are, if our objective is to do this, how do we know that we're getting closer to the objective? It's kind of like that thing, when you put on your map on your Google Maps or your preferred maps thing on your car, you're heading somewhere. You have that little number down there, right? It says arrival in these many minutes, right? That keeps moving, right? That's your KPI on how well are you doing navigating traffic, pretty much, right? So same idea for everything that you do in your business. So, if you're in charge of customer success or whatever, then you may have a different indicator than if you're in sales, right? But you have your indicator. Large companies, very good at setting these, right? Setting objectives, doing strategy, et cetera. And the second thing that they do very well that we miss sometimes in small businesses, they have a cadence. So this thing that we love to hate, the weekly meeting, the quarterly strategy meeting, whatever, right? Which is usually adorned by a bunch of, what, right? It's also, a lot of times not a lot of substance, right? But it keeps the business going at a drumbeat. It's a cadence, right? So when you're working with a smaller company or you're working in a smaller company, you lack many times all these different things. And starting from zero, like one of these larger corporations, and trying to hire, 3 MBA graduates and whatever, is just not feasible. You need to do it right now, right? As soon as possible. And you need to do it as cost effective as possible. So what System and Soul offers, or many of the other management frameworks out there, is that it's a template that you can place on top of the business. And now you get, first of all, you get a destination. You work on that, right? That's what we do. We work with the business owner and their management team to determine what is their true destination, where they want to take this business. What is the purpose for them for living, okay, for existence. Then you have the design, right? And this is the who does what, who reports to whom, right? What is the specific area that each person is responsible for? Then you have the scoreboard tells you is basically the KPIs, right? It tells you, are we doing well? Are we going towards that purpose, towards that destination? Which is, by the way, where are we going? Why are we going there? And when are we supposed to be there, right? So, and then you finally have the cadence. So it implements the system, provides a way to having a weekly, basically meeting where people align and move forward. Now, that's mostly the system piece, right? But you also have the soul piece, right? Which is, they kind of blend together, and I can talk about that a little bit, but it's the soul piece is more about this purpose, this ultimate purpose, right? And also, who are we as a company, as an organization, and what do we stand for? And then the culture of the company is actually built not just by that, but also by the habits that we perform. If every time someone sells something, we do a little victory dance, that's part of the culture, and that's a habit. That's something that we do every time that this happens, right? If every Friday we order pizza and we do that, something, it's part of the culture as well. But culture is also, if someone, fails on something, does something, that didn't work out quite well, but they did their best. If we celebrate that, if we give them a helping hand, if we have a good word with them, that's also part of the culture. So that's why System and Soul is so appealing to me, because it has these two facets, which is so important. Working with large companies, it's also one of the things that you learn is that they have the system piece down, but so many people that you cross with, at the proverbial water cooler, conversation or whatever, if you start talking to them about the purpose of the company and the values, and the mission and the vision, whatever, they start to roll their eyes, right?
Yeah.
Because they just, most of the people don't believe in these things, right? Or they just been jaded throughout the years, of hearing this over and over again. And actually, they have been either burned by a supervisor who's not living out those dreams, those values. I'm sorry, right? Yeah. So it's like, yes, you're telling me this, but you're really acting in a different way, right?
Yeah.
So but that soul piece is what really can make a culture where you're glad that Monday is here, right? And I'm going to do this thing that's so much fun that it's like, when you were a kid and you went out with your friends to play, right? Your mom had to yell at you 3 times through the window, come in because it's dinner time, right?
Yeah.
You didn't like, oh, it's 5, I'm leaving, right? No, you were out there, right? And you would have been there for quite a while if they didn't pull you in. So that's the feeling that we want, right? It's making something that it's worthwhile, it's fun, it pays us well, right?
Uh-huh.
And at the end of the day, that we're making an impact, right? So that's System and Soul. Yeah.
I like it. I love it because thinking back to my days in the corporate world, it felt nearly dead. Like the culture was, yes, we had those like, hey, it's employee appreciation week here, have a pizza, or these random things that really didn't mean anything because we didn't see it actually genuine. We knew we could see the facade behind it. And I think
Right.
because corporations have been around for 100+ years, it's hard for us the employees to feel connected to that in some way. Like you said, we're burned by supervisors or just jaded from being it repeated and not seeing it actually implemented by higher ups and that. And I love this idea that bringing actual soul back into it, making it actually connected to the people with this on a smaller scale, because small businesses don't have that chance. The full soul is the founder. He's the soul, the heart, the brain. And when you start getting employees, if they don't share that vision, if they don't share that, it's hard to continue the growth, because you're carrying all that determination to make it to Monday or over the weekends and that, and you can burn out. And so I love how you're implementing that with your System and Soul, bringing it full circle into it, showing that it's a living being. I'm curious, because this show is obviously about investing in oneself, and you've invested in yourself throughout your career transitions, going from entrepreneur to corporate and then back into the entrepreneurial landscape as a consultant. How have you invested in your personal and professional growth to navigate these changes successfully?
So I think so. Here's the thing. I'm a person who is a little bit atypical, right? I know that people are very reactive to change. Most people don't like change. I love it. I just, I can't stand being in the same place for too long, right? So, if I'm 2 years doing the same thing, I'm already looking for something new, right? But I also know that that's how the world works, especially today. You know, it's a just to give you an idea, and this is not to stress out anybody, but in my exponential organizations work, one of the things that I look at is these technologies that are affecting us. There are 10 core technologies, 10 that are coming to maturity in the next 10 years. And we are talking about technologies that are Gutenberg size technologies, printing press kind of impact technologies. 10 of them are coming to maturity. So that the size of the change that we're going to experience in the future is going to be enormous, right? But this is just, this is like, that story of the overnight success, 10 years in the making, right?
Yeah.
This is something that has been happening for a while, right? And I have seen how things have been changing. So I have constantly been investing in myself, training myself in the new things, just learning, all the time, and always looking for. In the beginning, I was like, okay, let's look at the things that I'm not so good at and try to learn them, right? Kind of like have a balanced personality and knowledge. Until I read Outliers from right, which is a tremendous book that tells you that you should actually work on the things that you're strongest at, right? But and then I started doing that, right? But it has been a constant thing. I have innumerable courses and things that I take just for the enjoyment. I also enjoy learning, right? That's one of the things. So that's also not typical in everybody, right? I would gladly go back to school if I could. If you get me a full tuition, right?
If I could go to school for free, I'd just go for fun.
And being sleep at the dorm, right? It's but that's not typical. But I would say keep an eye on the things that can transform. Don't ask, we tend to look at things and we look at how technologies can transform things, but we should ask how will our industry change under this situation? So we should start from our standpoint, and look at technologies and ask the question the other way around, is that what does this mean for me, right? Because very soon you will learn things that can happen and that are worth exploring, right? So yeah,
to your point, I love how Wine, you set up a beautiful segue into my next question. Thank you for that. And speaking about the future, but before we go there, I just want to touch on how you mentioned that we have to look at how technology is transforming our industry. And because I've been in the podcasting industry for the last decade,
right,
just one of the major things that's happened in the last year is the release of ChatGPT, which grew multiple of AI companies that are working for podcasters. You have Capsule, Cast Magic, Podcast, all these companies off the back of AI, which people were scared were going to hurt podcasting, but now it's just exponentially helped. So I love how you said, look at how the changes are coming and how they can change your industry and how you can stay ahead of it. Speaking of the future, and the changing landscape of entrepreneurship, you gave us a nice little foreshadowing that the next 10 years, a lot of groundbreaking technologies are going to be changing the landscape. Where do you see the biggest opportunity for growth for management-led team companies in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, so it's we're seeing automation, we're seeing all these things, and unfortunately, it seems to be shaping in a way where large conglomerates are going to accumulate the wealth that it's coming from these automation platforms? That's what really preoccupies me the most. But the thing is, the doing, quote unquote, is not as important anymore, right? To some extent. Really, where the value of individuals comes in is in asking the right questions, right? And I think that's the right area. So don't concentrate on a specific technology. Don't be the photographer who gets, displaced by the iPhone. Be the image creator, right? Understand how do you solve a problem for a person, Look at the verticals, look at the businesses that you work in or the industries that you work in. Look at the problems that are out there and be an expert in that, in solving those and in asking the right questions. Don't get entrenched in the technology, on the tool, because that's going to change. I think that's the one thing that I think we should look at. You asked a question in a way where you asked management team led companies, right?
Yeah.
So the great opportunity of that is that if I'm a solopreneur, right? And many times I'm like, okay, who do I talk to? Right. Now I have Phil on the screen, right? And we can debate something here. But usually I'm all alone, maybe listening to some podcast or Spotify, right? But I'm very much alone, many times. And then the thing is, I don't know everything. I'm not, I'm the only time I'm the smartest guy in the room is when I'm alone.
Don't give away our secrets.
Right. So, how can I become an expert in everything? How can I be the best resource for everything that I'm trying to do? And that's the beauty of having a management team. You can hire a genius in every single seat that you need instead of doing it yourself. And yes, maybe Jessica is not good at many things, but that she's going to collect. That those accounts receivable are just going to be fine and nice, right? And that Johnny is great at packaging, right? And the shipping department is going to be run well. So you don't have to have a genius per se, right, in every seat, but they can be genius at what they do. That's the beauty of a management team. That's the beauty. And also each of those key, managers that you have can run their department in the same way, right? So it kind of like trickles down in the whole organization. It becomes something, right? You can have an exceptional organization by doing it that way.
I love it. And it is true trickle down economics if you look at it.
This is the true one. Yeah,
because you
trickle down economics.
It's true, because you're trusting the people you hire to be the best at what they do, the genius, as you said, at what they do. You don't need them to be if they're in marketing, you don't need them to be in automation. They can't be in both because, as the famous quote of Homer Simpson, why half-ass one thing when you can half-ass two things? I'd rather someone not half-ass anything.
Right. So let me add something to what you said. It's for the entrepreneur who is trying to do everything and it's overwhelmed, right? And they are juggling all these balls in the air. The beauty of having something like System and Soul is that you have the system. So the processes are designed, or you design them basically as the entrepreneur. You design them to do their function, which is, if this happens, then do that. Okay? So it's an algorithmic thing, right? Every time you see this thing happening, this is how you're going to act. That's a process. Okay? Now, when you think about it, how do you know if this happens? It's because it happened before, right? So you have seen it. Now, think about what happens when one of your employees goes out and something happens which never happened before. What are they gonna do? So they either paralyze or they pick up the phone. They call you, right? And they say, Phil, this is happening, and very soon you're getting all these calls, right? And you're trying to manage this thing. And what happens if you are out of the picture? You went on, I don't know what you guys do in Montreal, but, you went on some camping trip or something, right? And you're not available. So when you have a clear purpose, you have a clear destination, and you also have your set of values that are deeply entrenched in the organization, you also understand, you have your metrics, right? And everything is in place. Values and destination are what drive decisions when the boss is not in the room. So now that employee that found this thing that, never seen before can actually make a decision that it's in tune and it's in synchrony with everything else that it's supposed to happen. So that's the reason why you have to have these things in place. It's not because it's just a feel good thing. It's good for your business. That's the idea, right?
I like that. It's empowering your employee to take control of the situation, and it echoes what Tim Ferriss says in the 4-Hour Work Week, which is kind of the Bible of entrepreneurship, if you and also again harks to what Henry Ford, I believe it was Henry Ford, said. I don't have to be a genius. I can press a button, call in a genius to answer my question. That's what you want. Again, I love this conversation we're having, and the wisdom and the knowledge you're sharing in the ideas, because you're reshaping how I look at business as well, which is nice being so young in my entrepreneurial journey. This is what I love. This is my education, if you will. This is my Harvard, nice. Getting to talk with people like yourself, Huba. But we're going to jump to the last question here, unfortunately, before we end the show. I would love to know, if I have your 10-year-old self here, what's one piece of advice you would love to hand back to your 10-year-old self, Huba?
So I think there's two things that create value. Where there's value, that's what I would say. And one is, so we used to think scarcity is the one, right? Mm-hmm. Scarcity, we exploit scarcity, we have value. But I think it's two of them. One is this complexity, right? So if you can solve a problem that is complex, you create value. But the third one is discomfort. And I would say, don't be discouraged by complexity and discomfort. Run to it. And one of the things that I would do, one of the first things is discomfort, sales. Get in front of people, talk to them, try to convince them to do something that they don't want to do, things like this. Try to, get yourself out there. That's something that I didn't do early in my life. And I would have, and I always think, dang, if I could have done that when I was a kid, and I would feel more natural, embodied in a situation where I have to make myself this, feel discomfort, it would be so much easier, right now. So that's what I would say. Yeah,
I love that. And I have to agree. I kind of have to agree. I didn't push myself enough when I was younger into that discomfort. And it kind of shows now. But Huba, I'm going to jump off stage here. I want you to talk to my audience, because I know we have a lot of founders listening to this podcast, future founders as well. Let them know where they can connect with you, how they can work with you at Thrive Monger, and work with this system and soul framework.
Right. So it's very simple. I'm Huba Rostonics. I'm the founder and head business advisor at Thrive Monger. The best way to find me is thrivemonger.com. That's my website. You can drop me a line at huba@thrivemonger.com. Or if you just type in Huba, Huba on LinkedIn, you will find me. There's not too many of us. Huba is an ancient Hungarian name, but not too many people on LinkedIn that use it. So that's the best way to find me. And I look forward to talking to you. We do have free assessment that you can take, which is really, beneficial. You will know where you stand on these different dimensions, and that's available at thrivemonger.com. You will see it right there on the first page.
I love it, Huba. Thank you again for being such an amazing guest and sharing your story with us. And the advice is invaluable.
Thank you, Phil. This has been fantastic. I mean, anytime, you want me back, I will be here. All right.
I think we did. We have some future questions for sure when I listen back to this. So I will send you that invite after this episode goes live. To my audience, make sure you check out the show notes down below to connect to Huba. I'll make sure I link to that free assessment so you can jump straight to it. And I want to thank you so much for listening. And remember always to invest in yourself.
Thanks for tuning in. Now it's time to take the next step. When you're ready to dive deeper into how to launch, grow, and monetize your podcast, Phil's got something special for you. Join him for a free webinar where he'll reveal the 3 secrets that have helped countless entrepreneurs succeed in podcasting. Click the link in the show notes to save your spot, and let's turn your podcasting dreams into reality.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.